beauty, integrity, truth, fraternity, love, and anything that human beings aspire to achieve, to taste, cannot possibly be captured within rituals. Rituals are dead. It's impossible to find anything other than death in rituals. Unfortunately, however, human beings, over the course of documented history, and certainly before even then, have always sought to find something worthwhile beyond the mundane in the execution or exercise of certain rituals. You see this in every corner of the world. There's no life in rituals. But we desperately try to create sesame oil by grinding the sand from the ocean, grinding sand particles and grains together, hoping to find sesame oil coming out from that. That is ritual. Years ago, when I was a student of ecclesiastics and basically I was living in a monastery / seminary school, you could say, yeah. For years I would observe the priests, the monks, the deacons, and the whole hierarchy of whom I consider to be living the kind of life that is connected with the spiritual, the religious, doing all kinds of rituals whenever they got on the quote-unquote stage, following certain steps to conduct certain types of rituals at certain times of the year. Different chants for different times of day, seasons, all these things. And I would chant with them, along with them, and I would see, yes, I am touching the divine, I am touching the divine, I am touching nonsense. Lifeless endeavor. That is ritual. And I see now in the world people continuing to do and conduct rituals. People are the ones who are the authors of rituals, nobody else. In all my studies throughout the years, decades, there's no evidence that says that anything or anyone other than humans were responsible for the bringing about of these things called rituals, nonsensical things. One might argue that they're not just nonsensical because they bring people together. Probably that is the only thing, any possible good thing that could come out of it. Unifying people and making them feel cozy inside, feeling that they are not alone, they have a joint cause here somewhere. But that also we need to take with a grain of salt, because oftentimes people hide their impurities, their ugliness in the conducting of rituals. Rituals that are purportedly or presumably the opposite of impurity, meaning purity, beauty. Things that human beings, at least on paper, or in their declarations of whatever organization, whatever religion it might be, whatever institution, claims to be following in conducting these rituals, such as fraternity, love, all these things. You have examples of this in all religions, in ancient religions, in Egyptian times, in Babylonian times before that. So long as you've had human beings, you had rituals. And today, in this so-called modern world, for the last few centuries, you have these things called organizations of Freemasonry and all that. And today we also have what these troublesome movements like satanic cults and all that are finally coming out into the open and fearlessly. They've become modern, ways of enticing the public. Symbolism, you see it everywhere, and it's troublesome. And nobody's talking about this. Symbolism that depicts ugliness, while society is going down the drain. There is no morality. In fact, if you do not have morality, then you have better chances to be somebody in society. In fact, it has become so ugly, the stench has become so bad. Even individuals who have been involved in such cult-like, hidden, covert institutions are discovering that this is wrong. How much am I going to be quiet about? Rituals. Rituals are things that justify, for many people, the inequity in the heart, the darkness in the heart. It's not the ritual. Rituals. No ritual can actually bring about something divine, something of the other worlds, if you will. It's just people that are making stuff up. But the coming together of the people is the thing which makes the quote-unquote ritual work or not, end quote. It's people. You can create rituals all the time. Ask a person who's had obsessive-compulsive disorder or traits of that sort. It's all ritualized. There's nothing sacred in there. There's nothing of the occult in there. It's just people who make these things. People. People who run away. People who like to run away from themselves. Their shameful thoughts. But when you have one person who has unwholesome thoughts, who in secret shares them with you, now you can engage with that person because you feel that to be as a safe zone for you to come out and speak about those unwholesome thoughts, ideas, intentions. Today, more than ever, human beings have become so corrupt, so devoid of, on a massive scale, so devoid of, empty of the wholesome, under the guise of doing something wholesome. Like people are talking about climate change and trying to cause havoc and suffering towards people and beings, that the only way that we can save the climate is by mass killing beings, flocks, or rather herds of cattle being slaughtered. Completely unscientific. Even though you have pseudoscience that are running the show. You have corrupted academia. You have corrupted governments. You have corrupt priesthood. Corrupt educational system. And the circulatory system that is making all these things run society down into the gutter is the media. Whoever has the loudest voice. And no one's talking about this. I'm wondering, where are all these detectives? Where are all these investigative minds? Science is all about investigation. And what do you investigate? You investigate patterns. You investigate patterns. You're not dissuaded. You're not easily convinced by whatever they distract you with. Certain events. In therapy, it's called contents. Don't be fooled by the contents. Look at the patterns. What is the undercurrent? What is the melody? What is the theme that you see running throughout all these different scenes, these measures, these patterns? Even a person with very low IQ could see there's some patterns going on here during the last few decades, and how there is also this crescendo of inequity, of injustice, of lies, of vulgarity. I remember within the last 10, 15 years, things that were completely unacceptable to be advertised, freely, openly shown on billboards or on TV screens or movie screens, talk shows. Now they're just like, hey. Well, that's what we call normalization. Normalization of killing, normalization of adultery, normalization of pedophilia. These are shocking. They're supposed to be shocking, but guess what? Today's human being is not that shocked anymore. And that is one of the quickest ways to run society or civilization into the gutter. When people are not shocked. In Buddhism, we have this twin, basically. One is called Hiri, and the other one's called Ottappa. Hiri is wise, moral shame. Wise, though. It's not the shame that psychologists during the last 10 years or so started to completely eradicate. Social scientists completely eradicate. To make shame itself to be something terrible, horrible. But no. They have thrown the baby with the bathwater. Shame is necessary. You don't walk outside naked, thinking, well, it's just the way I want to display myself. It's my body, it's my thing. No, you're considerate of other people. That's why you don't have family values anymore. Virtue is out the door. But you know, virtue doesn't disappear from one day being solidly present, healthy, wholesomely there in a society, and then the next gone. No, they do it by chipping away piece by piece, and that's what they've been doing for at least 60, 80 years, starting in the United States, and now spread all around the world. Some places, they're still behind at the rate of the uncivilized and corrupt way of the entropy, how it's moving down. It's actually bulldozing its way down from the top of the mountain all the way down to the lowest point, meaning from point of organization to disorganization. And that is what's being created. Chaos. Chaos. And when you have chaos, you start to not notice certain things. First of them is the lack in morality, virtue. Cannibalism becomes suddenly the in thing. Cannibalism. Killing becomes, so what? It's a normal thing. Speaking vulgarities on shows and speaking commonly, just normal people in communities, in at the watering hole, men and women. Using curse words, and that's a norm. That means the society is going down to the gutters. Because they're seeing that this is okay. Why? Because, hey, I'm doing the other rituals, so I'm fine. I'm fine. Just like when I was studying for priesthood, for becoming a monk, Christian monk years ago, I would see things. I would be shocked in seeing things, in their behavior, how immoral and non-virtuous. The same person who was talking about virtue half an hour ago, 5 minutes ago, standing at the altar to people, to the community. But hey, we were doing the rituals right. So that's what matters. So putting our hope in rituals is quite stupid. But at the same time, it is making not just ourselves, but the whole society at large pay for it. Because all the work that our ancestors have done in creating some form of civilization is being chipped away, destroyed. Values are being destroyed. Children are being sacrificed. Physically, emotionally, mentally, they're being corrupted in schools, in the way they think. As if being a child or someone going through puberty is not confusing enough. People don't have the honor anymore. They don't have the shame. People who have degrees have no shame to promote textbooks that are corrupting and destroying whatever hope we might have for the future in the next generation that's coming up. So there is no shame anymore. People are not being held responsible. Why? Because they belong to the right group of people. They have the right connections. And this is happening openly, and people are not lifting a finger to address this. Nobody's going after them. Nobody's holding them accountable. Least of all themselves. Then you have Ottappa. I mentioned Hiri and Ottappa. Ottappa is wise, moral dread, fear. That's another thing. Fear that if you want to see if a society is going, is being corrupted, is about to be corrupted, is going to lose its values, you look at the social sciences, to the humanities, so-called the humanities. And you see what is being promulgated, what's being promoted, what kind of ideologies, philosophies are being talked about and celebrated. And when a person no longer has dread or fear within themselves, not from the outside, because we have a lot of that going on nowadays. Everybody's doing something because of fear. Well, most of all, the fear of being left out, because everybody's doing this. And as a collective, we're afraid. We're panicking. And that's what governments are notorious. They've been doing that for over 20 years. Even earlier, but especially since 2001, where we have been losing our rights on a wholesale basis. And nobody's lifting a finger. No intelligent person is coming forward and saying, what is this? Are we going to stoop that low? So we're seeing the avalanche, we're seeing this collapse of society, and we're not doing anything. As a public, as communities. So this is absolutely not a good sign. Fear is necessary. Dread is necessary. People don't have shame. Next, they don't have fear. First, the shame has to be generated from within oneself. Oh, I can't do that. Why not? Well, because if I do this, even if I allow myself, I'm permissive towards that. But if my neighbor does that, I know I can't tolerate that. So don't do it yourself either. Why are you doing it then? So if what I'm about to do is something that I don't approve of being done by someone else, then I shouldn't do this. That is the beginning of the sense of shame within oneself. That is a necessary quality to be called a civilized human being. An emotionally, as they say, regulated human being. A wholesome human being, because you have the foundation of living a virtuous life. A virtue has become a passé word. It's not a word, it's a fact. It's a living experience. And no ritual can make it come about, can create it. No ritual. You can talk about fraternity, you can talk about love, you can talk about freedoms, and you can talk about this and that, but they mean nothing if it is not based on action. Action that is not in rituals. Rituals are just dead series of motions that might have actually started at one point by a simple, beautiful expression of love, of appreciation. Let's say when your hands are come together, like in the form of prayer, or what we call anjali, in front of your heart. At one point, a person might feel so moved by what they experience, by what they see. They might even be moved to tears. They might drop down on their knees and just bow down to something greater than themselves, than their wants and their desires or their fears. They feel obliged to bow down with tears in their eyes, with a smile on their face, in their hearts. That is a beautiful moment. But in order for us to repeat that later on, we start to want to repeat it in the form of ceremonies, rituals. Others also get to be moved by that. And yeah, let's come together, all of us. Tom, Dick, and Harry, we are come together and just let's repeat this. All of a sudden you have things like Freemasonry. different cults, religions. You have the same thing in Buddhism. I'm a Buddhist monk. We have the same thing in Buddhism. That's what I've been trying so hard to address, this issue, in my travels around the world with people, with actual, real, devout practitioners, individuals who really think, because their parents and their grandparents, etc., have been just doing these rituals, that's what's going to get them peace. That's what's going to get them joy and love. And none of that is going to do that. It's just a ritual. It's a dead thing. It's dead. How is that going to create something alive? How is it going to create something beautiful? Again, if there's any, like I was saying earlier, the only thing that can come out, maybe, possibly, and not always, out of rituals is the connection that people build with each other. The human element, again. What? The human element, which must also be alive. It must have the juiciness of truth within it. Kindness, love, appreciation, a smile. Unfortunately, people look at that and think that that has come about because of the ritual. That's how stupid people are. And that's how lazy people are. No ritual can bring you life. No ritual can bring you civilization. No ritual. But people are people. We are lazy by nature. And being authentic is all about work. It's the opposite of laziness. Being authentic requires you to unsheathe yourself, to come out of your sloth like a skin does, like a snake does by removing its skin, dead skin. It requires you to do that all the time. But going into the routine of doing rituals while you have other idiots doing the same, powerful idiots, by the way, very powerful idiots. Idiots because they don't value their lives. And that's what philosophy has done over the course of 150, 200 years, in Western philosophy, I mean, by removing the importance of the sacred. By the way, the sacred doesn't happen in churches, temples, this and that. No. The sacred space that one has to come to every single day, at least once, in the form of a prayer, in the form of whatever, however it might be. It might be a farmer touching the soil with his bare hands in appreciation of what this land is giving them, the life, the food, health. That's also a moment of prayer, of authenticity. We don't have that. It's rituals and organizations that have turned those rituals and those organizations into further, and made them even more covert, hidden and hidden and hidden and hidden, compartmentalized, covert activities. Do not make the dead come alive. The dead heart, that is. Instead, what it will do is, to feed its own ignorance, is to enlist, to hire, to bring to it more people that are still alive. And that happens in the form of convincing them, bribing them, terrorizing them, tempting them initially. Meanwhile, the ignorant, the very powerful ignorant, and you can't stay ignorant and powerful without causing much harm. Those are the beings who are causing harm to the world, to the societies, to civilizations, to generations of not just people, but other animals as well. They're the ones who are causing havoc to the environment, not the average person. Not the average person. They're the ones who have these plans to dominate, to kill and dominate, while they continue corrupting societies, making you into a celebrity. But nothing like that happens without some hitches, some secret contracts. Something for something. You can't get something for nothing, you know. That especially holds true with these beings, human beings, by the way, who like to think of themselves as something other than. No. It's human beings that are run by the three defilements, kileshas we call them in Buddhism. Kileshas are the defilements, the ugliness, the poisons in the heart. Whose heart? One's own heart. But remember, one person will feel very feeble, very weak, very stupid. But you bring two such stupid people together, and you let loose the poison in their hearts, suddenly it becomes legitimate. Suddenly you have the stock market. Suddenly you have the banking systems. Suddenly you have government systems. But so long as these people are running with the engine that is in their heart, engine that is completely corrupted, completely forgetting the beauty, that's why they're stupid, that's why they're ignorant of their own life in their heart. So long as they're alive, they have hope. These powerful, very incredibly powerful, most of whom are actually nameless. Nobody knows about them. You just know the fourth, fifth tier of control that they operate. Those are the ones that are manifested. Those are the ones that are visible or you hear about. But they themselves are completely in the dark. They're expert at that. That's why they're so powerful. But they're still people. Running all these so-called secret organizations and occults and things, it's nonsense. You have this amount of life left. You don't realize the terrors you're going to be living for eons, for the harm that you're causing to children, to people, to the environment, to animals, to generations. Each of you has to deal with the actions that you yourself have committed. But so long as you're alive, you have still a chance to change your path. Because that heart that is completely covered in thick layers of defilements, the greed, lust, anger or hatred, wanting to dominate, and the third one is indifference, complete indifference towards the pain and the cries of help, for help by others. You completely ignore. While you go and turn around and you listen to your other friends who are conducting the same rituals, and you lose yourself in them and thinking that this is it. Once I close my eyes, I'm dead, that's it. So whatever I did, and I'm fine. There were philosophies like this, both in Greece, but even earlier in India, where people thought, yeah, whatever I can do and get away with, that's all good and dandy. Lord Buddha would shock them into reality. No. There's so much horror waiting for you, and no one's causing that to you. No, God is going to give you those punishments. No, nothing. It is the actions that you are doing, engaging in repeatedly, every time you sign a document whereby an entire country is dominated by corruption, or an entire village or town is wiped out, an entire country is wiped out. People and their families are completely, suddenly, meet with some difficulties or death. And the media never covers it, of course. But you know what happened. Your henchmen know what happened, and you're all toast about that. But that action itself is the one that's going to drag you into the depths of incredibly painful hells, where you're going to try to run away. You will not. And you will die every millisecond because you have beings who will torture you. And unlike the people that you've tortured and you've caused deaths to, which happened only once for that person, when we are in hell, when we face the consequences of our actions that we have committed now, in this life, volitionally, intentionally committed actions, it will happen repeatedly, meaning you will die and then you will wake up immediately to face the same pain again. So you will never be able to run away from, no matter what philosophical atheistic schools you believed in. Gravity is gravity. Everyone's exposed to it, subject to it, whether you believe in gravity or not. A death is the doorway that will open you to all these inevitabilities. It's inevitable for you if you live without virtue. And I say these words right now because I see so much non-virtuous behavior from all walks of life. And it saddens me. It really saddens me that there isn't enough uproar against this. Uproar not to demand justice, this and that, but no, just to make people see what they're doing to themselves, first and foremost. They think that living, enjoying all these incredible, horrific things that they engage in their secret parties and things like that, which are now becoming more and more open. And people are openly talking about it in a nonchalant fashion. There's no shame, there's no fear. Because they have become untouchable. They think, well, yeah, untouchable until you croak and die. And no ritual is going to save you from that. So, the whole point is to come back to one's own virtue inside and rely on that, not some ritual. No ritual can ever save anybody, ever. It has never saved any of the cultures before us that have disappeared, and our culture is next, unless we do something about it, starting with bringing into our lives the sense of shame, wise, moral shame, moral, emphasis, underline, moral, shame, that comes from us, from oneself. And you're holding yourself accountable. How is this action, how is this word that I'm about to say is going to affect others? And if it is going to affect them, is it wholesome of an impact, or is it unwholesome? If it is an unwholesome one, I immediately stop. And that is where Ottappa comes. That is where fear comes. That's the second one, wise, moral, fear I was mentioning. These must be there. When people ask Lord Buddha, what is the indicator that society is doomed before the destruction of the planet? People have asked at the time of Lord Buddha to him, 2,600 years ago almost. And he said, when people forget about Hiri and Ottappa, they forget about wise moral shame, and they ignore, in fact, not just forget, actively engage in moving away from wise moral shame and wise moral fear, that is what's going to open up the gates of destruction. Not just physical, planetary destruction, which is coming if we go on this path, continue. But destruction of the person, because you're destroying your values, because there's none. Anything that you build, a chair, a house, a car, it needs to be disciplined. It needs to have some structure. We don't have that anymore. And the more unstructured it is, the more accolades society today is giving to that person. No ritual can bring forth life, beauty. No ritual. Only life brings forth life. Inspiration cannot come out of rituals. It comes from the heart, from the human heart. But it cannot do that so long as it is corrupted. So let us keep the heart clean. Wipe out the defilements from our hearts. I'll stop here.